I thought I'd seen every kind of drama at 35,000 feet, but nothing prepared me for the man in seat 15C. On a packed red-eye to London, his shocking prejudice forced our captain to deliver a lesson in decency the entire plane would never forget. The hum of a transatlantic flight is a sound I know better than my own heartbeat. For 12 years I've walked these aisles, serving coffee at 35,000 feet, calming nervous flyers, and witnessing the whole spectrum of human behavior condensed into a pressurized metal tube. I thought I'd seen it all. The drunken outbursts, the medical emergencies, the ridiculously entitled passengers who think their business class ticket makes them royalty. But nothing in all my years of service could have prepared me for the man in seat 15C. The flight was a standard red-eye from New York to London. Boarding was chaotic, as usual, a mix of weary business travelers, excited tourists, and families trying to wrangle overtired children. The man in 15C boarded early. He was one of those types a suit that probably cost more than my first car, a gleaming Rolex on his wrist, and a sneer that seemed to be a permanent fixture on his face. He'd huffed when he had to put his own briefcase in the overhead bin, and had curtly waved me away when I offered a welcoming smile. I mentally filed him under high maintenance and moved on. About 10 minutes later, a young woman appeared at his row, holding the hand of a little girl. The mother had a kind, tired face, the kind you see on every parent navigating an airport. She was gently coaxing her daughter, who couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 years old, down the narrow aisle. The little girl, clutching a well-loved teddy bear, had wide, curious eyes, taking in the grand adventure of it all. They were ticketed for 15A and 15B, the window and middle seats. The mother gave the man in the aisle seat a polite, apologetic smile. "Excuse me, sir," she said softly. "We just need to get in. The man looked up from his phone, his eyes flicking from the mother to the little girl beside her, and then his face changed. The sneer deepened into a look of pure disgust. He didn't move an inch. He just stared. The mother's smile faltered. "Sir, could you please let us by?" He slowly lowered his phone and said, in a voice loud enough for the surrounding rows to hear, "No." Just one word, cold and hard as a stone. I saw the interaction from a few rows back and started to make my way over. This was usually the point where I'd step in with a firm but friendly, "Let's make some room, everyone." But before I could get there, the mother, clearly confused, tried again. "I'm sorry. I think you misheard. These are our seats." She held up her boarding passes. The man finally stood up, but not to let them in. He turned and blocked the aisle, forcing them to stop. He looked down his nose at the little girl, who was now hiding slightly behind her mother's legs. Then he looked at her mother. "I am not sitting there," he declared, gesturing towards the empty seats. I arrived at the row. "Is there a problem here, sir?" I asked, keeping my voice level and professional. He turned his venom on me. "Yes, there's a problem. I paid for a premium seat on this aircraft. I am not going to spend the next 8 hours sitting next to her." He pointed a perfectly manicured finger directly at the small, innocent child. A hush fell over the cabin, thick and suffocating. You could feel dozens of eyes turning to our row. The mother's face crumpled. She instinctively pulled her daughter closer, shielding her as if from a physical blow. The little girl didn't understand the words, but she understood the hate in his voice. Her big brown eyes filled with tears. "Sir," I said, my voice dropping to an icy calm, "that little girl and her mother have assigned seats. You are in seat 15C. I need you to let them pass." "Are you deaf?" he snapped. "I'm not sitting next to a black child. Find them another seat. Or better yet, find me another seat. In first class, where I probably belong." The sheer audacity, the raw, unfiltered racism, stunned me silent for a second. The mother just stood there, speechless, her face a mask of shock and pain. I took a deep breath, my professional training kicking in. This wasn't a negotiation. "Sir, there are no other seats on this fully booked flight. Your assigned seat is 15C. I must insist you allow this family to sit down, or we will have a serious problem." He laughed, a short, ugly sound. "You have the problem, not me. I'm the paying customer. Now are you going to do your job or not?" He crossed his arms, a smirk on his face, daring me to challenge him. He thought his money and his perceived status made him untouchable. He thought he had won, but he had no idea who was in command of this aircraft. I looked at the mother's face, at the silent tears now streaming down her cheeks, and a cold, building rage settled deep in my bones. I picked up the intercom phone, my hand trembling slightly. I pressed the button for the cockpit. "Captain," I said, my voice low but steady. "We have a situation in the main cabin. I need you at row 15, immediately." The seconds that followed felt like an eternity. The man in 15C scoffed, clearly believing my call was an empty threat. The mother holding her little girl just looked at me with a silent, desperate plea. The entire section of the plane was dead quiet, the normal pre-flight chatter replaced by the heavy weight of 100 pairs of eyes, all focused on this one ugly, unfolding drama. Then we heard it. The telltale click of the cockpit door opening, followed by the measured, confident footsteps of someone in charge. Captain Evans was a man who commanded respect without saying a word. He was tall, with silvering hair at his temples and eyes that had seen more sunrises and storms than most people could imagine. He wasn't a man for dramatics. He was calm, methodical, and the absolute authority on his aircraft. He walked down the aisle, his face a neutral mask, and stopped beside me. He didn't look at the man in 15C. Not yet. His first glance was at the mother and her child. He gave them a small, almost imperceptible nod of reassurance before turning to me. "What's the situation, Sarah?" he asked, his voice low and even. I explained it quickly and quietly, my words a stark contrast to the venomous outburst we'd just heard. "Passenger in 15C is refusing to sit next to the passenger in 15B because she is a black child. He is demanding a new seat." Captain Evans absorbed this information without a flicker of expression. Only then did he turn his attention to the man. "Sir," he said, his voice still calm but now with a core of steel, "I am the captain of this flight. My flight attendant has informed me that you are refusing to take your assigned seat." The man seemed to puff out his chest, emboldened by the attention. "That's right, and I'll say it again for you. I paid a lot of money for this ticket. I will not be made uncomfortable for the entire flight because of your seating arrangements. It's unacceptable. I demand you move them or move me." The captain listened to the entire tirade without interruption. He let the man hang himself with his own words in front of a silent jury of his fellow passengers. When the man was finished, breathing heavily with self-righteous indignation, the captain simply said, "I see." Then he did something that completely shifted the power dynamic. He turned his back on the man in 15C, completely dismissing him. He knelt down slightly so he was closer to the little girl's eye level. She was still trying to hide behind her mother, her tear-stained face peeking out. "Hello there," the captain said, his voice now gentle. "What's your teddy bear's name?" The little girl sniffled, clutching the bear tighter. She whispered a name so quietly I could barely hear it. "Barnaby." "Barnaby," the captain repeated with a warm smile. "That's a very fine name for a very brave co-pilot. I bet Barnaby can't wait to see the clouds from his window seat." He then looked at the mother. "Ma'am, I deeply apologize for this situation. Please give me just one moment. We will have this sorted out." He stood up, his entire demeanor changing back to one of pure command. The man in 15C, looking furious at being ignored, opened his mouth to speak again, but the captain silenced him with a single, sharp look. He turned and walked a few paces to the front of the economy cabin, picked up the intercom handset, and pressed the button. His voice boomed through the aircraft, crisp and clear, cutting through the tense silence. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking from the main cabin. We are currently dealing with a small issue that is causing a delay in our departure. I want to thank you for your patience." He paused, and I could see the man in 15C smirking, thinking this was all for him, an official recognition of his problem. But the captain wasn't finished. "It has come to my attention," he continued, his voice ringing with authority, "that one of our passengers in economy class feels that his seat is not suitable for him. He has made it clear that he is unwilling to sit next to another passenger, a passenger who is, in fact, one of our youngest and most well-behaved travelers." Another pause, letting the words sink in. "He has demanded a different seat, so I have decided to accommodate him. The man's smirk widened into a triumphant grin. He had won. He was going to get his way. You see, the captain's voice dropped slightly, drawing everyone in. We do not tolerate this kind of behavior on our aircraft, not on my watch, so I have been in contact with my first-class crew, and it turns out we do have one seat available in our first-class cabin. A ripple of murmurs went through the cabin. I saw the man in 15C's posture change. He stood up straighter, a look of smug vindication spreading across his face. He actually believed the captain was rewarding his disgusting behavior. He shot a look at the mother and me, a look that said, "See, the world works the way I want it to." He even started to subtly reach for his briefcase in the overhead bin, preparing for his grand promotion to the front of the plane. The sheer nerve of him was staggering. But Captain Evans wasn't looking at him. He was still holding the intercom, his gaze sweeping over the faces of the other passengers, who were now watching him with rapt attention. He had the entire plane in the palm of his hand. However, the captain continued, his voice dropping just a fraction, pulling everyone in closer. We felt that sending a passenger to first class under these circumstances would be sending the wrong message. It would suggest that we, as an airline, condone this kind of discrimination. And I want to be perfectly clear. We do not. The man's triumphant expression froze, the smirk faltering as confusion began to cloud his features. He lowered his hand from the overhead bin. He didn't understand. The captain had just said there was a seat available. What was he talking about? On this flight, Captain Evans declared, his voice rising again with undeniable authority, we believe in decency. We believe in respect. We believe that a child's comfort and dignity are more valuable than any ticket price. Therefore, the empty seat in first class is not for the gentleman causing this disturbance. He paused, letting the silence stretch for a heartbeat. You could have heard a pin drop. The man in 15C just stared, his mouth slightly agape, the gears in his entitled mind grinding to a halt. Instead, the captain announced, and now he turned his head, his eyes locking directly onto the young mother who stood there, clutching her daughter's hand. I would like to offer that seat to the young lady in row 15 and her mother. A collective gasp went through the cabin, followed by a sudden, spontaneous eruption of applause. It started in the rows nearby and spread like a wave through the entire economy section. People were clapping, smiling, nodding in approval. It was a beautiful, unifying sound in the face of such ugliness. The mother looked up, her eyes wide with disbelief. She stared at the captain, then at me, as if asking if this was real. I gave her a huge, genuine smile and a firm nod. It was real. The man in 15C turned a shade of purple I had never seen before. "This is an outrage," he sputtered, his voice a choked whisper of fury. "You can't do that. I'm the one who complained. I'm the one who should be moved." Captain Evans hung up the intercom phone with a decisive click and turned to face him fully. The gentle demeanor he'd shown the child was gone, replaced by the ice-cold authority of a commander. "Sir, I can, and I have. You had two options. You could have sat in your assigned seat, 15C, and behaved like a decent human being. Or you could leave my aircraft. You have made it abundantly clear you are not capable of the first option." He gestured with his head towards the front of the plane. "So that leaves the second. Sarah," he said, turning to me, "please escort this family to their new seats in first class, and then please inform ground security that we have a passenger who will be deplaning." The finality in his voice was absolute. This wasn't a debate. It was a verdict. The man just stood there, stunned into silence. The entire plane was watching him, the applause having died down to a low murmur of approval. He was utterly, completely defeated. He had tried to wield his prejudice as a weapon, and in one swift, decisive move, the captain had turned it back on him, exposing him for the small, hateful person he was. I stepped forward, my heart soaring. "Ma'am," I said to the mother, my voice full of warmth, "if you and your little girl will follow me, we have a much nicer seat waiting for you." The mother, tears of gratitude now replacing the tears of hurt, nodded mutely. She picked up her daughter, who looked bewildered but safe in her mother's arms, and clutched Barnaby the bear tightly. As they started to walk past the man, I couldn't help but look at him one last time, His face was a thunderous mask of rage and humiliation. He opened his mouth, and I braced myself for another outburst, for a final desperate stand. But the words that came out weren't for us. They were a venomous snarl directed at the captain. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer," he hissed. "I'll have your job for this. You have no idea who I am." Captain Evans didn't even flinch. He just looked the man dead in the eye, a glint of something unreadable in his gaze. "Actually, sir," he said, his voice dangerously quiet, "I think you have no idea who I am." That last statement from Captain Evans hung in the air, charged with a meaning none of us could quite grasp. The man for the first time seemed genuinely uncertain. He had relied on his wealth and status as a shield and a sword his entire life, and the captain's quiet confidence seemed to punch right through it. He just stared, his threat about lawyers and job losses suddenly sounding hollow and pathetic. I led the mother and her daughter towards the front of the plane, walking them past the curtain into the hushed, spacious first-class cabin. The two flight attendants up front had heard the captain's announcement and were already preparing. They greeted the mother with warm, compassionate smiles, their professionalism a soothing balm after the ugliness in economy. I helped her get her daughter settled into a plush seat that looked more like a throne to the little girl. Her eyes were wide with wonder as she discovered the personal screen, the noise-canceling headphones, and the little amenity kit. For the first time since boarding, a real, brilliant smile lit up her face. The mother turned to me, her eyes still shimmering with unshed tears, but these were different now. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I don't know what to say. Thank you." "It's our absolute pleasure," I said, and I meant it more than I'd ever meant those words. "You just relax and enjoy your flight. We'll take wonderful care of you." As I turned to leave, I saw the disgraced passenger being escorted off the plane by two stern-looking airport security officers. He wasn't yelling anymore. His face was pale, his shoulders slumped in defeat. As he passed the cockpit door, it opened and Captain Evans stepped out. The man stopped, forced to face the captain one last time. "I told you," the man muttered, a final weak attempt at defiance. "You'll regret this. I'm a senior partner at Halstead and Finch. We handle the European portfolio for this airline's biggest corporate account. When I make a call on Monday morning, you'll be flying cargo planes to Siberia." Captain Evans just stood there, his hands clasped behind his back, listening patiently. When the man was finished, the captain gave a small, almost pitying sigh. "Halstead and Finch. I know them, and I know Richard Sterling, your CEO. Good man. We played a round of golf last month for the company charity tournament." He paused, letting the information land. "And you're right. You do handle our biggest corporate account, which is why Mr. Sterling will be particularly interested to learn that one of his senior partners attempted to publicly humiliate a child on one of our aircraft and caused a significant departure delay, all while citing his connection to the company as leverage." The man's face went from pale to ashen. The last bit of color drained away as the full weight of the captain's words crashed down on him. He hadn't just picked a fight with a flight crew. He had created a massive PR liability for his own firm and his biggest client. "You see," the captain continued, his voice calm and educational, as if explaining a complex navigational chart, "my name is David Evans. My father, Michael Evans, was one of the founders of this airline. This isn't just a job for me, sir. It's my family's name on the side of this plane, and I will not have that name associated with the kind of bigotry you've displayed today. Now please get off my aircraft." The security guards gently but firmly nudged the man forward, and he went without another word, a broken, deflated shell of the arrogant bully he had been just 20 minutes earlier. As the main cabin door was sealed shut, a new wave of applause, quieter but just as heartfelt, rippled through the plane. Captain Evans walked back to the cockpit, giving me a simple, appreciative nod as he passed. The rest of the flight was one of the best I've ever worked. The atmosphere was transformed. People were smiling at each other, making conversation across the aisles. The act of shared humanity, of standing up for what was right, had connected all of us. I checked on the mother and daughter in first class several times. The little girl, with Barnaby the bear buckled into the seat beside her, fell asleep with a peaceful smile on her face, dreaming of clouds. Her mother read a book, the deep lines of stress on her face having finally smoothed away. Before we landed in London, she handed me a small folded note. I didn't open it until after we had deplaned. It simply said, "Thank you for showing my daughter that good people still exist, and that heroes don't always wear capes sometimes. They wear pilot's wings." I still have that note. I keep it in my flight log, a reminder of the night I learned that one person's decency, amplified by a position of authority, can change the world, even if it's just the world inside a metal tube flying high above the clouds.